Well, after months of talk, it's confirmed foreigners will be banned from buying existing houses here from early next year. They will, however, be able to buy land to build new structures on. The one exception is Australians. Well, with us now is Chief Executive of the Property Institute, Ashley Church. Good morning, Ashley.
Good morning, Hilary.
What do you make of these plans?
Oh, look, I mean, firstly, as you've indicated, it was anticipated. It's been talked about for quite some period of time, but in the way that it's proposed to be implemented, pretty positive. It's not a ban. It's actually a redirection of investment. So for foreign investors that want to invest in residential property in New Zealand, they can still do so, but they've got to invest it in the construction of new buildings, and that's actually a good thing for the economy. With 40,000 odd houses in Auckland, it required almost straight away anything that we can do to redirect funding into building those homes has got to be a good thing.
But would that put a lot of them off, though, if they've got to build it?
I think it probably will, and the reality has been, if I'm to be honest, if you look back over the last few years of the experience of the market, is that to the extent that we've had foreign investment in the residential property market, it's primarily been in competition with Kiwis wanting to buy homes and existing homes and basically inflating the value of those homes. So there hasn't been a lot of investment into new dwellings. Time will tell whether or not the determination to invest here is so strong that they're prepared to invest it into new dwellings instead.
Yeah, do we actually know? Do we have the figures on the effect that foreign buyers are having on our market?
We absolutely do. So it's interesting, about 18 months ago, Land Information New Zealand put a register in place because of the demand to know, because there was a lot of hyperbole around how big that number actually was, and there were estimates of upwards of 30%. When that register came out, the first numbers came out earlier this year, and they indicated the actual incident is much lower. It's somewhere around between 6 and 8%. So it's an impact on the market, but it wasn't the huge impact on the market that was being indicated by previous commentators.
Okay, so what will the effect on the market be of putting these new rules in place?
Not much. So in the short term, very little impact for two reasons. One, because those numbers weren't as high as had originally been anticipated, but secondly, because as we both know, Hilary, because we talk about it a lot, the market's actually pretty flat right now. So there's not a lot of people who are looking to invest in the market anyway, whether they be foreign investors or Kiwis. But in the longer term, and I think this is what's really important, in the longer term in respect of this and a number of the other things that Phil Twyford's currently putting in place, this is a contributor to what will be, I hope, the construction of new homes over the next 5 to 10 years, and that's got to be a good thing.
Yeah, let's talk about the Australian exemption. Tell us a bit more about why that's there.
Well, basically unavoidable. The relationship between New Zealand and Australia is completely different to pretty much all of the other free trade agreements we've got with countries like Malaysia, China, etc., where those are basically trade agreements that relate to the transit of goods and services. The Australian relationship is more like the European Union. It's essentially a relationship that deals both with goods, services and with people, and so trying to unravel that or put exemptions in place on that would have been hugely problematic for Labor. So it's not a case of them saying, hey, we'll make an exception for our mates over in Australia. It's a case of that relationship being so strong that it would have been very difficult for them to have done anything different.
Okay, so the government's going to change the Overseas Investment Act to make residential dwellings, quote, sensitive land. So what would be required then for non-residents to be able to buy sensitive land? How complicated is that process?
So as I understand it, it basically means that it falls into the same regime as farms and other businesses that go through the OIA at the moment and OIO at the moment and have to apply. But my understanding is also that they've pretty much given a tacit indication that even were they to apply under that sensitive land application, they're going to be refused. So I think this is more about using that as a mechanism than necessarily trying to put these applications through that particular office. It's really about saying, hey, we wanted to put a ban in place. Here's one that works for us right now, so this is what we're going to use.
Okay, what about loopholes in terms of buying property? I mean, if people have trusts set up, is there a way to buy property and get around the rules?
Well, it's certainly going to the extent that there's an appetite for this, it's certainly going to be an opportunity for lawyers, as these things invariably are. But I mean, at the end of the day, it comes down to, in terms of ownership, it comes down to whose name's on the title. So if somebody wants to go to the trouble of actually going through a process of passing money through different hands so that the title's in the hands of a Kiwi, ultimately that still means that it's a Kiwi owning it, because it has to be a Kiwi in order to comply with these rules. So I don't think we need to be too concerned about those sorts of mechanisms.
Okay, well, let's just sort of round it up, come back to square one. We're talking housing crisis. Labor's trying to fix it. How much of an impact will this be for first home buyers?
On first home buyers, Almost none. Unfortunately, it would be nice if I was able to say, hey, look, it's going to bring prices down, or it's going to do something that's going to impact and make it easier for people to buy houses. Unfortunately, that's not the case because, as I say, we're not in the boom at the moment. We're in a flat period. In the medium to long term, this may well have an impact on the whole market, including first-time buyers. But right now, this is probably more symbolic than it is actually in terms of the effect that it's going to have.
Property Institute CEO Ashley Church, thanks for your time this morning.
That is a very, very interesting point. Really interesting perspective there from the Property Institute. We've been asking you on Facebook this morning if you think it's going to help New Zealanders get into the property market, if it'll help Kiwis buy homes. Winnie says this morning, that's great. Now our children will be able to buy a house without being outbid by foreign buyers who pay way too much for our property. Eleanor says, so the foreign buyers can only have nice new homes while Kiwis are left living in the old ones.
Well, no, the Kiwis can build them too.
Yeah, we can build them as well.
Just to entice the building of more new homes.
Yeah, and to be honest, I think it's likely that it will. When you have to go in and buy a new home, you have to invest so much more time in a country and all those sorts of things. It's probably a less lucrative option for foreigners who are simply wanting to speculate for investment purposes in our property market. But let us know what you think. Breakfast on One is our Facebook page. Do you think banning foreign speculation will make it easier for Kiwis to buy a house?